Welcome to Rach and Sue's Spread the Good News. I'm Rach.
And I'm Suze, and we're here to spread the good news. Even though we're here to spread the good news, we are not Bible scholars, pastors, or theologians.
We're best friends who love Jesus, talking about the Bible, growing in our walk together with the Lord, and chatting together.
And we do this so often, we figured we might as well record our conversations.
Welcome back, taste testers, to another episode of Rach and Sue's Spread the Good News. And I am very excited to announce that you're going to love this episode. It is a continuation, it's a part two, a 2.0, if you will, with our dear friend Mahira, who's going to walk us through a very important topic. Suzanne, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, we're excited to have Mahira back. And for part two, we have been speaking about community and the difference between community and socializing and ways to build community and what that looks like. And I think we had left off, we were talking about community feeling whole as opposed to not having to fragment ourselves throughout different relationships. And so I think we're just going to pick up there.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. And I think that I've really been reflecting on our conversation and especially on that last bit. Um, and the way if I could further elaborate on that idea, is that if you think about the communities that existed before these modern times, um, it would comprise of people of all types, from all walks of life. Um, and that's what I see community as, which means you're kind of accepting people regardless of age, background, political views, life experiences, and that's what I imagine community should be. Um, Not just, and therefore, because we are accepting everybody with their imperfections, you then invite your own imperfections as well into that community. So when I say not fragmented, it means that you don't have to leave a part of you behind just to be accepted.
Mm.
I love that. Because I mean, Suzanne and I talk about this all the time, that we create space for each other and our differences, that we allow each other the permission to agree to disagree. That, you know what, we probably won't see eye to eye on this topic, and that is okay, because the love that we have for one another is larger than our differing viewpoints. Um, Did we, last time we were together, did we discuss extending grace? Mahara, I feel like you were the one that brought it up, that there was an elderly gentleman or an older gentleman in your community that you had to extend grace to because maybe he said some things that were hurtful, but you're like, you know what? It's just who he is, and I I'll make space for it and just look past it. Did I fever dream that, or is that an experience that you had?
I think I remember the conversation kind of sharing about like an experience perhaps with a neighbor.
Okay.
And I remember like perhaps like one of the things that we had more of was like kind of a tolerance of accepting people for their imperfections,
Mm,
um, and offering grace. And then obviously like there was a whole conversation around like what if there is something hurtful or abusive that also shows up in collectivist cultures, which is very, very true. And I guess what I would say to that is keeping, like, that's the difference, is like keeping an eye out and making sure that you are being a little bit boundaried. But I think nowadays boundaries are treated as barriers. And
mm,
I feel like that there is a difference between the two. But yeah, definitely like inviting grace or approaching imperfections with humor or a little bit lightness versus making mental, now it is like we make mental notes, right? We're like,
Mm.
oh, we're not gonna engage with this person. This person's like, we're gonna cancel this person.
Yes. Yes. And that brings up the whole how cancel culture has actually made more divisions instead of being inclusive. Um, that's it's when you disagree with somebody's worldview, you don't make space for them. What then do you have left but to cut them off and cancel them? And that is the antithesis of what community does. Community, and I think something, I don't know, a light bulb just went bing, is that if someone is being very harmful, then there needs to be hopefully a conversation for accountability, right? Um, when this happened, I felt this, and I would like it if this was done instead. And hopefully that person would be willing to say, "Oh, okay, yes, I can do that." But and extend grace of like, "Okay, that's not how I do things, but I'm willing to do that for you if that's what you need." And therefore, I think people with differences can meet each other in the middle. And there's compromise there, right? Um, so that is, I think that's an important ingredient in order to not cut people off. There has to be conversation and accountability. But then that other person has to, on the other side of that, they have to be willing to be redirected, I guess, or like open to receiving that person saying, "Hey, I did not like this. I would prefer this if you do this next time." What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what comes to me is that because we have our communities are siloed in terms of we have almost curated, or we call them communities in the sense that we make sure that everybody's like-minded, we all have the same opinions, we come from similar faith backgrounds, and therefore the tolerance for difficult conversations is also like reduced because that is a muscle that's developed. Look, so when you are engaging with people who have differences of opinion or different age or come from a different, heritage, it allows you to build or shift something inside you to build tolerance, but also to engage in difficult conversations. I think that's like if we go back to like Suzanne and I, like we came from completely different worldviews, and the reason why we love each other today is because we were able to give space for having those conversations, disagreeing on things, and um so you're almost like creating like cognitive room, right? And because you develop that muscle, then you can speak to people plainly and say, hey, this felt like this to me. Help me understand how that felt for you, or you develop the language. And it feels more authentic. Um, but if we don't do that, if we're always around people who we're just then creating echo chambers, right? And that's what you see right now in the world, is that there are echo chambers. People are just agreeing with the same things constantly and feeling, oh, we're right. But there is no like, whenever there is a differential kind of point of view or there is some difference in opinion, it's like treated as, oh my God, this is like, we can't tolerate it anymore. And so we cancel them.
It's so true. I love that you compare it to like working out a muscle, that it's something, it feels uncomfortable in the beginning, but the more that you engage in the discomfort, the more comfortable it becomes. And then very soon it's a light weight as opposed to a heavy weight.
I think too the thing that I'm thinking about that you kind of answered, Mahira, was when someone disagrees with a view that I have, I feel like a tightening in my chest. Like I feel something physical inside of me.
Hmm.
When it's like a hardcore belief that I have that they are completely against, or I feel something physically, and I have to, like you said, cognitively like choose to calm that. And I think that people don't, maybe they don't feel it the same way I do, but you have to practice that, right? It is a muscle that you have to strengthen. And we all know, like, if you work out and you're working out the right way, you can, your muscles rip, and that's why you have sore muscles, and then they heal and they're stronger, right? So this is a practice and a muscle, but the echo chamber, I think, is the danger, and that everyone's sort of experiencing. And I think what I learned when I was younger, when I have this feeling that comes up, is that it feels like a personal attack. And maybe sometimes it is, but with the people that I engage with who have vastly different beliefs than I do, it's, I have to remind myself, because I think the initial feeling is like, oh, they're attacking you. And the muscle is like, no, no, they just have a different viewpoint or a different opinion. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean they're attacking you or that they are condemning you, or whatever word we want to use. And I think that that is maybe not the process that people kind of work through to get there, to get to that point. And that's why cancel culture is such a thing. And
Mhm.
so I don't I don't know that you have an answer to this, or maybe this isn't the right question, but like, how do people, if they have never used this muscle, like, how do they start to say, hold on, this, I feel this way. I feel like they're wrong and they're telling me I'm wrong, but I want to start you using this muscle. Like, how does someone do that?
I mean, lots of ways. I would say, like, it depends on the person. If a person is interested in building a community, if that is their like kind of focus, um, then I would invite people to think and know that you don't build community by trying to find people who are exactly like us.
Hmm.
And you build community by becoming the kind of person who contributes to the lives of others, which means that the people you're interacting with cannot be just based off the few conversations you've had. Um, and it isn't also through grand gestures. It's you know, it's like simple things like you've had a conversation with someone and then you follow up after that conversation. You remember someone's birthday or interview or illness and losses. So you're making space in your life as this person, as a human being, and not just the conversation or the belief that they expressed.
Hmm.
And so I guess to answer your question, Suzanne, it's moving and shifting your mind away because our mind like kind of circulates around, well, this person said this. And it's almost like you turn curious. You're like, what is happening in this person's life? What are they carrying? How am I sharing my humanity with this person?
Hmm.
And I don't
I
think
think
people think from that point of view anymore. I think they did at one point, but I don't think they do anymore.
Mm.
I agree with you. And I think what you said there, like seeing them as human, right? Like they are a person with experiences and thoughts and relationships and worries and concerns and grievances, just like you, right? And I do think we've lost that ability to see other people as human beings, and they are just their political stance, or they're just their stance on whatever the hot button topic is, or whatever the disagreement is over. We've lost the ability to see them as a full person.
Yeah.
I really liked what you said, Mahira, about asking questions. Like if somebody said something and you find it, like Suzanne said, it has a visceral reaction in your body, like I disagree with that, or I that really, hurt my feelings because it's such a deep seated value of ideas for me. Asking the question of like, well, what's behind that? Being investigative instead of coming from a place of like placing judgment, I guess, of just like, well, like, huh, I wonder why they feel that way. I wonder, where does that come from? Or you know, what life experiences do they have that would lead them to this conclusion that I don't agree with? And I think that does help. I think, Suzanne, you were asking what can someone who is so easily ready to just cut people off if they don't agree, or if someone's hurt their feelings, if they come with a mindset of like, I want to get to know you, I want to understand you. I think that's a big thing, is like, I'm here to care enough about you to understand you better, and like, well, why do you feel that way? What like I remember one time I was there's a I'm responsible for my jobs. They give us leader teachers a box, and it has supplies in that we need for every class that we teach. And I had to hand the box off to someone, and I was like, please, please, please make sure that it comes back safely. And this person, I think, was hurt that I kind of questioned their integrity or their responsibility. And the truth was, it had more to do with me and my youth, accidentally losing things or accidentally harming things and getting in so much trouble for it. Or in the past, I have put trust in someone to take care of something, and it came back to me, um, not as well taken care of as I had given it to them. So this person had said like, "Whoa, who hurt you?" And my response was, "Me." Like, I did it to myself, and I know, I'm sure that you're a much more responsible person than I am, but I have put myself in so many pickles that I am a little petrified to let go of control. And having that conversation, the other person said, "Oh, girl, don't worry about it. Like, I've got this. It's going to be okay." I just needed that reassurance, and had way less to do with that other person, and had more to do with like my, low key, lowercase trauma. And but you know having that opportunity, that person was honest. It was just like, whoa, what's behind that? Essentially, that's what they were saying, right? Was, who
Mhm.
hurt you? And it's like, what is what is going on here? Like, and then me reassuring that other person, like, hey, this has less to do with you than it has to do with me, and my mistakes in life and my consequences for my mistakes. So after that conversation, we were totally okay again. But I think, it's important to be vulnerable and not to take offense when somebody says like, "What's behind that? Like, what's going on there?" What Because that's, maybe it was hurtful to that person. So just being willing to have those conversations and ask those questions, I think, really helps if someone is so easily like ready to cut people off just because they've been questioned or they've been disagreed with.
Mhm. Yeah.
It also makes me think, kind of right before you started down that path, Rach, but I think it also aligns with that a little bit. Mahara, makes me think of the dare to lead um,
Mm.
question, like the story I'm
Right.
telling myself is
Yes.
dot dot
Yeah.
dot. So I don't know if that you can totally give yourself a plug here, but Mahira is it like it's not a degree? What is it? Like a certificate?
Yeah, it's a
You're
certificate. Yeah.
certified. You're a certified Brene Brown Dare to Lead. Is it coach? I don't know. You tell.
Trainer, yeah, Dare to Lead
Trainer.
trainer. So
Okay.
yeah, working with the
Um,
teams. Yeah.
yeah, but one of the things that leadership, so leadership doesn't only have to be like a leader of a team, right? Like a CEO or a VP or someone who is in charge of other people. It's literally every person. Every person is a leader in some way. And we are story making, our brains are story making machines, right? And so a lot of times when we have big feels, one of the things that Brene Brown has talked a lot about in her Dare to Lead stuff, that Mary, you could probably speak to this better, but that you pause for a second and say, the story I'm telling myself is,
Hmm.
and then sometimes that can calm you down. So like if I go back to like my 15-year-old self who's having this visceral reaction because someone disagrees with me, the story I'm telling myself is, oh, they're attacking me. And
Mhm.
if I were to tell myself like this is the story I have, I would recognize that that's probably not true. So to just like have that pause, not only to be curious about the other person, but to understand the story that I am likely making up in my head about the other person.
Yeah, and it's also like that when you do that, it's like slowing down, right? We're
Yeah.
slowing ourselves down, we're slowing our thoughts down. And sometimes our thoughts move really, really fast, and our thoughts are not us, and they're just there to, they're there. Like sometimes they guide us, and sometimes they're giving us good information. And sometimes our thoughts are known to tell us things which are untrue. And it's important to slow it down and to recognize and be aware and sit with that. And also, I think, because we are constantly like surrounded by confirmation bias, um, we don't have the muscle to sit with imperfection, which means
Mm,
that if my 15-year-old, and I'm not saying that she is this way, but my 15-year-old, if she is making friends because she's constantly surrounded by people who share exactly the same beliefs with her, wear the same clothes, talk about the same things, she's losing the muscle to be tolerate that my friend is kind and gentle and really supportive and can sometimes say some things inappropriately.
mm,
And both those, and we've lost the ability to recognize our own imperfections because we don't see, we don't want, we don't have the tolerance to seeing other people's imperfections, but we also don't have tolerance for our own.
so true.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I'm looking at the man in the mirror and I'm asking him to change, you know?
Don't
Yeah.
be singing that one. We don't have money for that.
I know, I know. I won't. I refuse. But yeah, I mean, you know who I'm trying to sing. Yeah.
For sure.
Um, and I think what we've started to think of community as, so this is something that may be true for a lot of your audience, is for them to think that we think community as something we choose, but many faith traditions suggest that community begins with the people God has already placed around us.
Mm.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
I 100% believe that. Yeah.
So that means that notice the neighbor, the new person at the church or the mosque, the parent standing alone at the football practice,
Hmm.
um, the elderly person living next door. Like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And as a verse in the Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, and that's what community really does, right? It's that we rub up against each other, we challenge each other, and through that we become sharper. Our muscle to um, strengthen community bonds grows.
Yep.
So thinking about this, if we are reaching out to the stranger, the neighbor, people we don't know, and we're trying to build a community, and we want that, but it can feel very vulnerable. And then if people shut you down, it can be even harder to step out and do that again. So, uh, what would you say? What would you say about that, Mahara? Like how do you how do you try again if you've tried and you get shut down and it's hurtful? Because stepping out and being that person, it is vulnerable, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And if you are and you get hurt, then it's a lot harder. So
Yeah,
how
you're right. It is hard. And the reality is that if someone is truly wanting to be a community builder, they would want to go in with the reality that our communities, as they stand right now, are fragmented, divided, exclusive, have lost the muscle to like show up or be part of it or engage in it. And so you go in realistic. You go in that you may have, if you do this the first time, you probably will not get the outcome you're imagining. So this is going to be something you need to practice a few times. Um, Sometimes a lot longer than you envisage, but it's about perseverance and persistence. But also knowing that it's not about you, it has to do with the muscle that exists in our society right now.
Mm.
People are suspicious, people, and I understand that. Like I don't want to be naive and say that it's out of good reason. They're suspicious or you're just, if, for example, if you're hosting at home and you're inviting people to share a meal or you're checking in on someone after an illness, this all feels, unfortunately, all this hospitality feels foreign.
Mhm.
It feels like, why are you doing this for me? You don't know me enough, or we're not best friends. But you don't have to be someone's best friend to be in a community, and that's what community is. Um, That's the difference between socializing, because socializing is convenient, right? It's like we gotta make it into our schedule. We have to. Community often happens when it isn't convenient. Showing up for someone at the hospital, helping someone move house, babysitting, dropping off food. These are like you're you're willing to be inconvenient yourself to be able to build that. So it's hard work.
It is hard work, and I guess I also want to say there's nothing wrong with socializing, but I think that what I am realizing, kind of to go back to the conversation we had in the first part of our episode was, or in our first episode, was that there's a vast difference between socializing and community, right? Which is why we're talking about this. But there's nothing wrong with socializing. It's
Yeah,
just an understanding that they're two vastly different things.
yeah. And we all socialize. We all meet and connect and, go out for coffee or make time for a friend, etc. And that's fine. Community is different. Community building is very different.
I I want to ask you, and you are completely free to say no or not willing to talk about that. But you've had such a stark experience, and I know you touched on this a little bit before, but you've had such a stark experience moving from a region of the world where, most people around you are part of your community, and you've come to North America and you live here now. And I I don't think you've actually used this word to me, but I get the sense that it's a culture shock in terms of
Mm.
the lack of community. Are
Yeah.
you are you willing to share a little bit about that? And again, feel free to say no if it's too personal, and there's no pressure. But I'm just wondering if you can give like examples of the difference between what how you've experienced community, um as a cult, like I guess a culture of community, versus how we all are in North America, because Rachel and I have talked about this and we're like, yeah, we do not live in a community, we society, we live in a nice society. So if you're willing, we'd love to hear it, and if not, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could speak from my experience is that I moved countries twice, right? I mean, different ages, different times in my life, but when I moved the first time round, I moved to the UAE, which is in the Gulf. And I was 30 years old. I had a very young child at that point. I want to also say and preface is that the nature and makeup of the demographic of people in the UAE is 90% are expats. They
Mm.
come from other parts of the world, so they are seeking and hungry for community as well. And so I do think there is something about being primed like that. But it's also a part of the world which is like if you think of the host country, they're very traditional. The mosque is a place of community. It's a place where people come every Friday together. And yes, you do your prayers, but you also say hello to all your neighbors and you exchange, stories about some uncle who you met and talked about them. So it's like it's repetitive meeting in a similar environment. There is um consistency and predictability. Um, and there's also like, I think generosity of like time and resources. And I want to say that part of it is culture, like, because the makeup of the UAE is predominantly like there's a lot of South Asian there's a huge South Asian population. There's Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, etc. And they come from collectivist culture. So even when I went, like my first thing was like, okay, who do I connect with? How do I connect with these people? Um, Obviously my children were young, and so they would I only had my daughter at that when I moved, and then my son came along, and then they both went to nursery, and so there was a community of moms around that, and so we had a shared experience in that, and we were all from different backgrounds, right? But we had a shared goal of like we have to raise these kids, and so therefore there was a lot of like tolerance towards each other. The culture, the land did dictate how we showed up. And the difference I have felt now, like, almost 2 decades, but not exactly, moving to North America, I had set up similar expectations. I know a lot of, Suzanne will tell you, I know people from many parts of the world. I don't know why, but I do. And my experience here was that people were kind, and they would like, they would say, oh yeah, let's meet up, or we we would try and make time, but and there were some people here who I'd known for like years, and then I just think that people are so involved in their lives, and there is a sense of like we were nuclear families in Dubai as well, but there was like a shared experience of being there for each other, helping out each other. um Here, I felt like it was asking for a lot, and there was a lot more planning that was needed to meet people. I understand that the other thing is that we have a lot of help, domestic help, and people in this part of the world don't necessarily have that. But I felt like I would still like now, if you asked me, and if a friend of mine like said, "Hey, do you want to grab something?" I would give them a date and a time, and it would not be like a month later. It would be like, "Yeah, let's do Tuesday morning. Let's grab breakfast." Or so what I learned, I felt quite like lonely. Like I'd never, I told Suzanne this, I'd never felt loneliness the way I felt here.
Do
Um,
you remember what I said to you?
sort of to remind me.
I, when you said that it was the first time you'd ever felt lonely like that, I said, I can't imagine what that's like because I felt that my whole life. Meaning that what you're experiencing is the norm here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see that like the clients I work, and you know what? Like I work with families and couples, and I have a few couples who are a little bit older, and when they reflect on their life, maybe in the 80s or the 90s as adults, not as young people, but as like adults, and they talk about it being different in Canada. Like there was a
Mhm.
sense of larger connections and community. Um, and slowly and gradually, everyone just has gone into their silos, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like this drive to individualism. I don't know, but it's just something that I definitely have felt as I've lived here for the past, well, now 11 months.
I mean, I'm not a sociologist, but I honestly think it's the internet age because
Mm-hmm.
I think we mentioned this in the last episode, Rach. Like we talked about a little bit about how when we grew up in the 80s and 90s, how the community was still it was still like a tangible thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I really do believe that it's the age of the internet that has
Mhm.
completely changed that because now, like I took my dog to the vet today and I'm trying to be off my phone more. And I was sitting there in the waiting area and didn't pull out my phone on purpose. Like I was like, I don't want to do this. And everyone else was on their phone, you
Yeah.
know? And like if that had been in the 90s, you know, like my mom waiting in a doctor's office, like you might say like, "Hi, how's it going?" Or you might be reading a magazine or whatever, or you'd smile at the people around you. Like it was just
Mm,
I'm not saying that that's like necessarily community, but life was different and I am very much of the belief that like having computers in our pockets and the world at our fingertips has done a really bad number on us. And there are statistics. I'm sure we everyone listening knows that, you know, there are all kinds of books and articles out about how bad it is for development and our brain and our attention span and all of that. And I think that's a huge part of it. But then algorithms have really made those echo chambers all we hear or see. And if you're not
Mhm.
actively fighting against that, you're you're just falling into the flow of it.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so for me, that I mean, I'm not saying I'm right, but that's my belief is that the 80s and 90s were different, and that probably was the last time that community felt like it was sort of cultural
Mm.
Suzanne, you
here.
sorry to
Sorry, go ahead.
interrupt, but like my ADHD movie snippet mind just went to the movie Elf when Buddy is in the mailroom and he's like, I'm in the flow. He's like, yeah, just go with the flow. He's like, no, I gotta get out of the flow. And it's like, it's true. It because it is so addictive to be on social media and even before social media was a thing like Facebook before Facebook there was AOL chat room. You could have conversations with anybody around the world if as long as you had AOL. And a lot of people like wouldn't leave their house and they made connections with people around the world just from their comfort of their bedroom, and it's kind of in the beginning we're like, what's the harm in that? That's a good thing because now the world is getting smaller. That's great. But when you're depending on that solely and you start imploding rather than reaching out to the people around you, it can be it's I mean, look where it's evolved to now.
I
And
think that's the difference, Rach, right? Is like so I can't lie. I've benefited from that, from the online communities and like my nerddom, you know. It's like not everyone in my real life enjoys fandom stuff the way I do. So to have that outlet is great, but it doesn't replace like actual people that I can see and hug and spend time with in
Mm.
person. And I think that's the difference, like exactly what you said.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely pros and cons, right? There are people who have been able to find community online because they are, for whatever reasons, not been able to do that in real life. I do agree with you, Suzanne, that social media uh, in itself is a great tool. It allowed me to connect with my roommate from halfway across the world. But as it stands now, it's just isolating us from differences of opinion. Like
Mhm.
that is the piece which is it's removing the muscle for tolerance. And this is why like there's like this whole, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but there's like in the UK, they're like restricting social media use for 16 years and younger.
It's amazing.
I mean, I don't know if the law is passed, but then we also have to remember that the people who control these social medias are like big corporate giants and they're benefiting from our attention economy. So
Yeah.
they will they will do whatever they can. And so therefore, yeah, like it being intentional, balancing is important. Um, but here's the bright side. is that human beings have built communities their entire existence.
Mhm. We can do
It's
it.
yeah, and so I know, and so there are people who are actively now doing this. You just need strong leadership
Mm,
and you build community. You can hold differences of opinion. You can reach across the aisle and be like, "Hey, you know what? I see you as a human being and I want to talk to you. I will hold you accountable for some of the stuff you're saying, but I also share humanity with you."
yeah. I think that's the fundamental thing, right? If we boil this down to the very essence, it's like seeing other people who may disagree or who you have vastly different opinions from, seeing them as humans.
Mm,
Because I think that that is also an ability we've lost. And that is if we are to build community, if we are to be those leaders, if we are the ones to reach across the aisle and to talk to our neighbor and the lonely, father, mother at the ball game with your kids or whatever, that is to see them as a person, as a
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
human, and have compassion.
Yeah, and it's not merely, so here's the other piece, which I think that we confuse. Community is not a source, it's not merely a source of comfort. Actually, I believe it is a moral practice of caring for one another while allowing each person the dignity to remain fully themselves.
Mm,
Yeah, that's huge. Because everybody wants that, right? Everybody wants to be accepted um, for who they are. And that doesn't mean that you don't allow, room for growth and correction. But as you said, holding each other accountable for things said. But yeah, being accepted for like the essence of who you are, that is such a gift and it's so special and everybody is looking for that. So we have in common.
agreed. I see that we're running low on time. So, Mahira, is there anything else that you would say or share or impart your wisdom on us? Like, is there anything that maybe we didn't kind of touch on in the last few minutes about community versus socializing?
Well, just like kind of recapping, like how do you, create community? Um it's notice people. Um Whatever you feel is possible, practice the hospitality, whatever is your muscle at this point in time. And be willing to inconvenience yourself.
Hmm. I love that. Be willing to inconvenience yourself. Absolutely.
That's going to be hard for people to hear.
Mhm. You can still
But I
hold
think the
boundaries.
reward, huh?
You can still hold boundaries. It doesn't mean you're rescuing everyone. It means you're being generous without losing yourself.
Mm, I love that.
Mm-hmm. That should be on a t-shirt.
Yeah. We're looking for t-shirt slogans. That might have to go on one.
Go for
We'll
it.
credit you, Mahira.
TM.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being willing to come back and talk
Mm-hmm.
about community and dig in to how we can be leaders to build a community or strengthen a community, how we can, I mean, I really think it would be bettering not just the community, but ourselves, right? To open ourselves up to other people. And so just thank you for sharing your insight and your wisdom. Thank you for being my friend. I love you so much. And I love having you on here. And so just thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, shout out to Rach and Suze.
Oh, thank you.
Rach, do you wanna close us in a prayer?
Yeah, absolutely. Father in heaven, I thank you for your mercy and grace. Lord, I thank you for relationships. I thank you for community, something that you have created, that you've instilled in all of us human beings. I pray that we would make space for each other, that we would be willing to be inconvenienced and to hold each other accountable, but also um, to be inquisitive and ask questions, to seek a better understanding of the people that you have placed in our path, and help us to grow in our muscles of tolerating differences in order to, for the purpose of to grow in community and grow in love for one another. And Lord, I just pray that you be with us and help us do these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. All right, friends, go and be community builders and community leaders, and we will talk to you next time. She's Rach.
And she's Suze.
Thank you for joining us as we spread the good news.
Taste and see, the Lord is good.